allows them to do that.
Well, there's no cost to you as a coach when you move them around. So what I mean by that is, all these players come in with a really strong talent. Andrew's unusual because his talent was defensive hockey when he first came in. And then he developed an offensive game. So he's worked really hard at his hands. He's worked really hard at reading plays. He's an exceptionally bright player. So if you put him with Scheif and Wheeler, there's no cost to it because that line just becomes a better defensive line. So that you get with whoever he plays with. And as you're seeing with Stas and Nikolai, he can make plays. He can read the offensive game. So he's and you're right. Like the fact that he can play center and wing. We had a conversation last week about the idea of playing right wing. He felt that he'd be able to make that transition over there as well. So that's another spot you may see him over the course of the year. But his talent, his gift that he's really good at is reading the play defensively, so that you can put him out against anybody at any time.
Go next to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Ken.
Morning, Paul. You talked a lot about lessons learned Sunday night. What was the most important of those lessons?
How to get back to work the next day. We go into the third down. We take the lead in very short order with about 5.5 minutes left, and then lose it off. Probably off a penalty at the end of the game, and then you need to recover from that. You need to get over. It wasn't a matter of having a big lead and sitting on it for 20 minutes where you have to look at the video and say, these are the elements that you see when you sit on a lead, and that has to come out of our game. It was a couple of quick hitters that found the back of the net, and it's painful, especially when your energy level's low. So getting recovered yesterday was the important lesson.
We'll go next to Jim Matheson. Go ahead, Jim.
Paul, just to change topic today, Wayne Gretzky turned 60 today. Does that make you feel old? And did you coach against them?
I did.
In any game?
Well, this is how it gets real old. I had seasons tickets when he played in junior in Sault Ste. Marie. So when he would be about 18, I did coached against him. And, he was playing for St. Louis, and he scored a goal against us one night that still bothers me. And and I'm not going to mention the goalie's name, like if it was Jason Mazzatti or not, but we're finally going to beat St. Louis in St. Louis, and he comes down the wing, and he might be the only guy in the zone. And I think his butt was probably touching the back wall at the hash marks, and he shot it in the middle of the net. And I had to watch that thing about 50 times to figure out how the puck went in. Right. And there's just those guys, they saw things that nobody else saw. Somehow he found a hole in the middle of the net, and ended up, we lost the game 5-4. So I would say I have a lot of, I don't know that they're unusual. I've got a lot of fan memories of Wayne Gretzky, because that would be the guy, right? He plays for the Sioux Greyhounds. So he's 18. That puts me at about 11 or 12. He's a god in your town. And it was a different game. And I remember people saying when he was playing junior, he's never going to play in the NHL. It's too small. Those guys will kill him. That wasn't a good scouting report. And then, the 80s Oilers, I'm playing junior hockey when Charlie Huddy on our staff, and those guys are winning Stanley Cup. So you're cheering for that team. I've had a chance to meet him a bunch of times because he comes to the Heritage games and he comes to say hi to Charlie. And I had Paul Coffey for a while, so got a chance to run into him. But I think one of my favorites is we won the Eastern Conference, and we lose to Detroit in the Stanley Cup final. So, and because of that, I went to the award ceremony at the end of the year, and Ronnie Francis won the King Clancy Award. So I was introducing him for the award, and then after, I'm walking down the hallway, and Wayne Gretzky standing in the hallway, and I'm with my wife, and I turn and say hello, and I said to my wife, "This is Wayne Gretzky," and she looked at me like I had 3 heads and gave me yeah, I know. So that was one of my favorites, because we laugh about that one all the time, that I thought I needed to introduce Wayne Gretzky to my wife. That was funny.
We'll go next to Jack Michaels from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Jack.
Paul, sorry to shift back to the game the other night, but I just wanted to ask you, in your experience as a coach, do you ever have teams that struggle shaking off a tough loss like the other night? Is that ever an issue? Is there ever a carryover effect?
I think there is. I think you have to look at the weight of the game around earlier in the year. And I'm fairly aware of the 4-pointedness and how critical these points are going to be and all of that. But if you do that in a normal schedule, you do that in game 73 and you're fighting for your playoff lives, the weight of that is huge. If you sit behind the bench and you like 2 out of the 3 periods and you feel your team has given an absolutely honest effort, and yeah, it's heartbreaking for sure, and it's early enough in the year, I think you come back and it drives you. I don't think that loss, my expectation is the way that game ended won't drag us down. It will drive us and focus us for this game.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul, I know it's early, but I'm just wondering if carrying the third netminder on the active roster and maybe having to be a player short due to CPRA and that sort of thing, does the taxi squad alleviate that, or have you found that has created some challenges here in the early going on putting together lineups from one game to the next?
Yeah, we haven't really, we've been fortunate, Kelly, because you're allowed to take non-roster for these players, and for Dylan DeMello, we were able to non-roster him, so we were able to access that taxi squad. It hasn't been an issue for us. There's, I guess scenarios potentially going down the road where you would have injuries that would be short-term injuries that would not put you in a place where you could IR a player, where you would, need to call a guy up but have to waive a guy to do it if that was possible. But so far, we haven't it hasn't been a problem for us dealing with it.
We'll go next to Sarah Orleski from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, just wondering with that Stastny line, whether it be offensively or defensively, just the fact that they've had the chemistry that they appear to have had early on, what that's meant to you and your group.
I think we got part of it is it's allowed 4 lines to develop something. It's changed the role definition. So with Andrew Kopp, not with Adam Lowry, then I don't use Lowry in the same kind of checking role. But I'm in no hurry to break that up because of the way Stastny's lines played. The way it started was they were playing Norris against them in the first period of the first Ottawa game, and they had an awful lot of chances. And then we had Perreault there. So the flip to put Andrew Kopp on that line was to add some defensive stability to it. And then it took off. So some of, how long do you leave lines together? They're rolling, we're going to leave them. It becomes when does the matchup change where that line doesn't work against the line it's playing against, and then you'll start to look at making adjustments from there.
We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Paul, I'm not trying to get too philosophical here, but understanding that, all coaches are different and all players' skill sets are, different for the most part. I'm just kind of curious, how can a player, young or old, best endear himself to you?
Just be a good teammate, right? One of the critical pieces to being a young player is just kind of coming in and fitting into that room. So your room has a culture and a character. So does your team, a style of play. Your leaders do. And you want to try to have your young players emulate your leaders. As the coach, you've picked your leaders. You've looked at the men in your room and thought, these are the people that we would like to have our young players emulate. How they train on their off days, how they approach the game. So you have a belief system then in place between your leadership and yourself, and then you want the young players to come in and then emulate those leaders that you have in the room. So that is kind of the bond that they create with each other. You've got young guys that come in that will look at your top end guys and say, oh, I'm going to play like them, I'm going to practice like them, and they kind of immediately get absorbed into the group.
And final question to Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
Paul, you always look to contain guys like McDavid and Draisaitl. What did your group do well during the first 55 minutes the other night against those two specifically?
Wow, that's such a dangerous thing to think that you can. What you like to do is limit them to the chances that they get based on their physical abilities. So Connor McDavid's getting loose. He's going to get into a one-on-one with somebody, and then there's going to be a speed issue, and he's going to get that chance. And Leon Draisaitl, you know, I could see it going back to when we were together at the World Cup, is such a powerful man, even at a very young age, that if he gets into a one-on-one in certain situations, he's just going to beat him, and he's going to generate that chance. So what you try to eliminate are all the things that are then interactionary. The reasons that they get chances are with the people that they play with. You can't shut them down, I think, individually for the entire game. They're going to get their chances, but you want to make sure that you maybe can slow down the group instead of necessarily the individual.